Welcome to this week's 2018 Azure Bootcamp on data modernization. What is data modernization? Think about it in three components. All databases have applications associated with them. There's the maintaining and performance of those databases, as well as the intelligence associated with those databases, the information that goes into them. So you can utilize the cloud for all three or one of those components. So by moving those applications or databases or the intelligence into Azure, you're trying to take advantage of the IaaS or PaaS capabilities in Azure to modernize your access or your use of data. So for example, you could just move your SQL databases into Azure and you're doing one component of data modernization. You're running your databases more efficiently and you're optimizing those databases. You could also move your applications. So now two of those tiers are in Azure, or you could do all three. You'd have your applications and databases running in Azure, and you're doing your reporting, data warehouses, and business intelligence on top of those. When you do that, you're doing data modernization, and you're actually practicing data as a service.
What are some of the challenges with data modernization? One is kind of the retiring of on-premise hardware. We start to see the 3 to 5 year life cycles of these machines, and the data platforms and hardware are getting bigger and bigger and requiring more resources. These machines are costing much more. And as you know, when you buy a server and you're spending $10,000, $20,000 on these things, in another 3 to 5 years they're worth like 2 to 5. So now there's a huge issue there that's being answered by moving your data platform to the cloud. In addition to that is lack of intelligence to your data. Some of these cognitive services or AI systems require a lot of horsepower to run. That doesn't quite make sense to put inside your data center, especially since you're using it, kind of a transactional basis or on a time basis where you don't necessarily need all that computing power at once. The cloud answers that as well. We have a lot of compliance, whether it's PCI or the kind of what's the prevalent with GDPR right now, that you need to change the way you're tracking, auditing, and using your data. You have to implement these systems on premise. That's difficult, and it's expensive. Another one's operational challenges. So the ever-changing platforms, the operational maturity around your data ops and those types of things, keeping that in-house is getting more and more challenging. Some fun facts to kind of think about, with data modernization, more than half, 60% of the companies, they don't get past the planning phase of modernizing their data. We'll give you some strategies on how to fix that kind of, and have that tilt towards you. So basically what that means is like they're going through all the planning effort, but it never moves because it's complicated and it's difficult. And they try to do too much at once. On-premise virtual machines, whether it's application or data, are underutilized. That's basically money, whether it's power, to run it, the actual hardware itself, or the humans to maintain those, is not being put to its full potential. Money out the window there. In addition to that, 74% of IT are dedicated to operations and maintenance. And this is really, all this money going into maintaining these data systems. Companies that actually finally do modernize their data, not only moving that data to the cloud and leveraging those platforms, but also, taking advantage of the PaaS components and operational givebacks there, are seeing their margins nearly double around those products. So how do you get to data modernization, right? I mean, kind of the goals is to be able to kind of do reliable migration at scale. So how are you going to expand your strategy across all your data platforms? There's some options out there to lift and shift. That's, to migrate those VM with no code changes. Definitely something you want to think about. But you also want to look at how to modernize those data platforms to PaaS components. And Azure offers options across all the major technologies, including, obviously SQL Server, but MySQL, Postgres, MongoDB, and those other types of technologies. In addition to that, you can maximize your enterprise agreement or other SQL Server licenses for your on-premise into the cloud. There's something that your AE can help out with, or other types of consultants, or internally to try to understand how you can use your SQL Server licensing in the cloud as well, and possibly save quite a bit of money in that regard. When setting out to modernize your data, here's this prescriptive 4-step process you want to think about. First, you want to kind of define why you want to move to the cloud. What's your goals? Next, you want to kind of do an assessment. What are your data platforms? How many resources are they using from a storage processing and networking capacity. What are your impacted applications? Who's using this data? Once you do that, you want to have a plan. And that plan really talks about your strategy of moving forward. So, what are you doing for connectivity? Are you doing a lift and shift? Are you using the new, newer and more contemporary kind of PaaS offerings? What are you doing for operations and those types of things? Really start to kind of take this checklist right here and work through all those items. If you do that and you take the define, assess, and plan, your migrate will be much more successful. When you're migrating, figure out how you can automatically provision those instances through its ARM templates or technologies such as TerraGo. And then really start to test your migration. Now, that is cutting off your existing applications to the new data platform. Make sure it works. Run through those smoke tests and QA tests, make sure it works right. When looking at whether you want to use IaaS or PaaS, this is a really good graphic I've used in several different presentations. This is from Microsoft here. If you see, kind of a magic quadrant. So if you look in your lower left-hand corner, you can kind of see the traditional on-premise data platforms. And this is really it's a higher cost, higher administration, you're maintaining everything. And as you go up to the right, you're increasing your abstraction and virtualization. And all the way up to the right, and kind of upper right in that magic quadrant, you can kind of see using those Azure SQL databases and doing a platform as a service. So really, you're starting to see a lower administration and lower cost because you're paying on only what you use, and the administration costs are less because of a lot of the operations from backups, restore, monitoring, threat analytics is happening from the platform. Your humans don't need to do that anymore. So when you're going out to set out, look at PaaS solutions. Some lessons learned, throughout modernizing data, in our experience is this is really kind of a marathon of sprints, as we like to say. Kind of chunk it out. Find your low risk data workloads, move those first, and then progressively get to the more high risk and more complex workloads. Start small, then you'll start to go better in the future. Find all the applications that are using these databases. We've seen in several instances where the assess wasn't done right. They move the data and all of a sudden applications are broken. Very complex, system and services environments now we want to address. You want to have a dedicated team to kind of see this migration through. We're talking about a marathon of sprints, so this is a team, so you're modernizing your data over the months and years. Have that team kind of see it through across the organization, right? One thing to think about when moving your data to the cloud, there could be some additional latency between services that you didn't necessarily have on premise because you're using the cloud. Kind of test and measure for that and mitigate that through localizing the services or adjusting the way you transact data. In addition to that, and there is an Azure Bootcamp series on this. Look at subscription planning and governance. I cannot stress this enough. Set up your Azure subscription correctly from the beginning, and you'll have more success down the road.